Hi, if you are somebody who is a parent to somebody with higher than average support needs, however that looks on the spectrum, and you also have support needs, you also have a disability that definitely impacts your life, because we know again that that is a huge struggle in itself. Or alternatively, you are thinking about having children, but you really want as much information as possible, then this video is for you. Hi, I'm Jade. I apologise, I look so tired, and that's because I am. I'm somebody who rarely knows. I have late processing and I have a fluctuating capacity, so I'm at the point where this video is purely being done because one, I think it will be helpful to other people, but two, I'm hoping it will be quite therapeutic in getting it outside of the body to give me some level of capacity back. I have been working through and doing many different additional things that are not currently or usually on my workload, and I'm empty, so that's the reason why I do not look quite as youthful as I would normally look. Anyway, hi, I'm Jade. I am a person-centered private therapist. I run JMS Wellbeing, and this is my beautiful healing space. I create a lot of content around neurodiversity, thought-provoking, sometimes maybe quite intense discussions, and psychology and all that kind of thought-provoking good stuff. I also do videos on health and mental health in general. If that is something that you're interested in, please do stick around and join our community of people. So I think the three of the biggest struggles of being a parent when you have children with support needs, so you have children that are on the spectrum but you also have support needs yourself, is number one, understanding your own personal limits, but number two, understanding that those children take priority and they come above us and in front of us always, and three, the overstimulation that can cause, and navigating that to the best of our ability, but not in a perfectionistic way where we are constantly pulling ourselves apart, criticizing ourselves, and not just using it as an opportunity to learn from and get better. It's something that I say to my clients all of the time, is it's not about not making a mistake, we all make them. It's kind of part of being human, but it's more the what we do once we realize that we maybe have not navigated that the best way that we can. When we make a decision with the information we now have to navigate that better, do something better, learn what we need to learn to get better, that is the fundamental difference in my mind between somebody who is going to make a difference and is going to help and be helpful to themselves and others, versus somebody who is completely ignorant and unwilling to see and be unaware of the potential damage that might cause. So let's just jump right into it. The first thing that I want to mention is, if you are somebody who is either embarking on the journey of becoming self-diagnosed or officially diagnosed, but you think that you might be autistic, many people have a different view on this, and that's fine. Like I say, take what fits, leave what doesn't, take the meat, leave the bones, form your own opinions. But I think this is the fundamental importance of why diagnosis is so important. I actually saw a video on something that I think is a really interesting topic to discuss, and it was a woman who is autistic and how she believes that there is a pipeline between, right, and again, hear me out, and I'm going to do a video going more in depth in this, but the pipeline of how autism and narcissism can be, they are different, let me just say that, but they can be interconnected, and how she was basically raised by a narcissist, and how that then becomes how she basically looks for love and support, and then how somebody had stitched this video who is a narcissist. Narcissism is often It's a personality disorder that is often formed due to many factors, genetical factors, environmental factors, emotional factors, but it is basically a byproduct of all those things accumulated, and one of them being that when they've not had their needs met, rather than leaning into empathy, they lean away from empathy, and once the disconnect has been severed, it is severed permanently. And he basically went on to basically speak about how he is a narcissist and he was raised by a man, his dad, who is autistic, and how dad being what he deemed as being cold and his mum being what he deemed as an attention seeker, the combination of the two created the outcome for him, which is that he has been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. Again, the reason I raise this at this point is because we all want the best outcomes for our children. We all want the best outcomes for our possible future children. And we have to consider, there's so much to consider in the sheer weight of the role of being a parent. And I think that anybody watching this video, the first thing that I want to say is don't concern yourself with that, because you are already not in that boat, because you are concerned with your impact on your children, and you're clearly watching this video because you're wanting to gain some level of insight in trying to be the best parent that you can be. So just know that you are not in any way living inside that sort of realm. However, I think that we have to consider potential outcomes for our children depending on how we function as a parent and how well we meet their needs, whilst also considering that we cannot ignore the fact that we also have needs, and we have support needs, and we have mental health needs, that the more you ignore them, the actual further problems you cause, not only for yourself but for your children. So do you see how the weighing scales of that is that you can't focus on self, but you can't focus on self, but you equally cannot ignore self? So that is what this video is going to be about. I'm going to split it into two sections, which is going to be basically working on the framework that you need to do and meet for self, and then working on the framework and the kind of the things that I believe is important to work on as a parent, and meeting the needs for them, for your children, or the potentials of future children. I'm going to start with what I think you should be doing for yourself. And the reason I say this is because the fuller your cup is, the more you can pour into your children and create better outcomes for them. That being said though, the difficult balance of that is that your children will always fundamentally come first, and I will go into that too. So I think you first have to accept your limits. But in order to accept your limits, you first have to recognise what they are. I think that it is a really important thing that you have to explore who you are and truly get to know yourself. The second one would be that I would focus on progress and not perfection. Perfection can be a huge problem in the autistic community, where we feel like we have to perform or understand everything and work towards perfection and getting things completely correct. And it's just an impossible hill to climb, and it's not healthy for you, and it's not healthy for your children to either be a part of or also observe. And I know it's hard if you are somebody, and I am also one of them, who hold yourself to a really high degree of expectation. But when it comes to parenting, you will make more progress with the aim of progress than you will with the aim of perfection. It's normal to make mistakes and learn from what goes right, but equally also what goes wrong. And it's the idea that parenting, just like any other aspect of life, it's not a race, it's not a competition, it's a steady journey towards aiming towards a destination that is right for you and right for your children. The third one would be practicing self-compassion and treating yourself like you matter, because you do. If you treat yourself like you don't matter, people around you learn that you don't matter. That is not healthy. That's not good for your kids to pick up and observe either. And sorry, there is a pigeon on my window. And just treating yourself with that same level of kindness that you probably treat others with, and that you just hold as an expectation that everyone should be treated with compassion and kindness. But sometimes we can forget that we have to do that for ourselves too, and we have to mirror that for our children and for the people around us, that all deserve that. We all deserve that. If, for example, one day you're overstimulated and you don't have a partner to tap out with and just kind of have that sort of meltdown, shut down in another room to recuperate, to be able to come back in, and you snap and you say something like, just please stop touching me. And then you realise that that's maybe not the most effective thing to do, but you've not made a conscious choice to do that. You have just reached capacity. The best way of subsiding that and making sure that that doesn't happen in the future is not shame, is not guilt, is not criticism, is not pulling and bullying yourself. It is the, what happened? What happened? How did I reach capacity? What would I like that to look like in the future? Do I need to apologise? Do I also need to understand myself more? Coming with a compassionate approach will help you immensely. Number 4 would be set realistic expectations. What life looks like for you and your children might not look like the life that you see of the family next door, the friendship group that you are observing on Facebook, or all the people you're observing on Facebook, maybe even another family member and their children. That's okay. That is, not only is it okay, it's necessary. It's necessary for you to consider that your children don't like being perceived. So placing them to be centre of attention in the middle of a dance recital is maybe going to cause them so much level of anxiety that it might have to look different. Maybe they don't even want to do the hobby. Maybe they like a hobby that is an art class where they're not being perceived. Or maybe they don't actually feel up to going to that party or that social gathering. Maybe you don't. And even though there are times when we may need to challenge ourselves, in the sense of that we are social creatures and we do desire social connection and interaction, the social interaction and connection that we desire and are the most suitable for us could look different. It might be in a different format, and that is totally okay. And beginning to let yourself feel like that is okay. The 5th one would be establishing a self-care routine, basically practicing stress reduction is suitable and accessible to somebody who is autistic or neurodivergent. I can't stress this one enough. If you are pouring and pouring, no matter how much you love your children, no matter how much you love your life, you will have a capacity point. You will have a point where you don't have any more energy in your reserve tank to give to that thing. The more you pour into, even if it's just do you know what? I just need half an hour of not talking, so I don't mind getting up early. I'm going to get up half an hour earlier than my children to just sit in silence and have no demands on me. Or I'm going to make sure that I staple in a bit of time once a month to go to the library. First one that came into my head, because maybe that interests you. Or go to a yoga class, or take up a passion, crafting, for example, like a crafting class, or an artwork class, or just something that basically is you pouring into you and showing you that you care about you care about your outcomes, and that you matter. Because again, the more that we build into that, the more that we can give from that. And it's not always about giving, but in the circumstances of being a parent, it is. And we have to consider that if we don't have anything to give, then that's going to actually negatively affect our children anyway, long term. Number 6, this is a hard one, and I know it's controversial and everybody agrees with it, but I do use it personally as a parent who has a disability, obviously who's autistic, and also has children who are neurodivergent. I communicate my needs. I don't do it in a parentification way. Parentification is basically the term where they take on the parent role and you take on a child role. I don't burden them. I don't tell them in an adult-like way. I don't give them unnecessary detail about how this is causing some sort of long-term damage to me, but I do explain so that they can understand what is going on. And that could look like, oh, hasn't today been a long day? And they might go yes or no, or however they feel about it. You acknowledge, but you also don't invalidate or retract or withdraw what you might feel. So it could be, yeah, I'm quite tired today. I'm feeling like I don't, have all the energy in the world to do all the jobs today, so I'm probably just going to do a couple of them. What would you like to do with me that, doesn't require a lot of our energy today? Let's have a look at that. And basically helping them navigate what it takes to consider another person. Because this, for me, is so fundamentally important in terms of, I don't ever want my children to ever minimize themselves and their needs and not understand that they are so important and that they're allowed to place that first if they need to. But I do not want them to be people who don't consider anybody else, because I think that falls over into more of a dark tetrad quality, which is the sort of, I am the centre and nobody else matters. I personally don't agree with that. I personally don't want that for myself or my children. I think it is the fine balancing act of, we love each other, we care about each other, and we have to understand that although they take priority and they understand that as a parent that is my priority, I'm also a human being and I also have a capacity, and I'm not going to burden them with it, but I'm also not going to keep them in the dark about it either. Number 7 would be adapting your parenting style to your needs, your boundaries, their boundaries, your limitations, their limitations. Again, this is a fine juggling act and you're not going to get it right first time. Who would expect you to? It's hard enough for a typical parent who has children with lower support needs, and take in mind how much a baby has support needs in general, but then that's like the continual lifelong expectation. I think that we have to make sure that we're not setting ourselves up for failure. So the understanding, yes, that they might take priority, but also understanding that that doesn't mean that you subtract yourself completely, because that is going to cause dangerous outcomes for you and for them, because they need you to be optimal. They need you to be as good as you can be, as healthy as you can be, so that they can thrive with having you as a parent. So we have to consider your personal limitations in alignment with their personal limitations. And sometimes that might come in direct conflict with each other. It could be that they are hyposensitive to touch, so they desire touch, and you are hypersensitive to touch and you are overwhelmed by touch. And it is the bringing of the worlds together, but without not considering either or. You'd obviously always consider them. You'd consider that they do need a hug. They really do need a hug. They might need a lot of stimulation, so they might need that level of input and you might struggle to always give it. But the more optimal you are, the more that you can find that middle ground where actually they need that in order to feel the that sort of sensation, but also the warmth of the connection with you. It's an important aspect of their connection to you. So it is a hard and fine juggling act and a fine balance, and it's almost like walking a tightrope constantly. But it's important that we do. It's important that we do, and we consider everything that we need to consider so that we can have the best outcome of crossing the tightrope and getting to the other side. And that being that their needs are met, because if their needs are not met, that causes consequences, but equally not subtracting you. Now, moving on to what is really important for your children. Even though I've kind of touched on it a little bit with talking about what is important for you in terms of parenting, let's look at what is really important for children. From what I've seen both in my experience as a parent, but also in my experience, I've worked in high schools and college, and I have seen this time and time again, and I'm so confident in this framework. That is why I'm delivering this to you. The first one would be a clear, child-friendly and neuro-affirming communication. This just basically means that you communicate in a way that doesn't leave them feeling confused, it doesn't leave them feeling unclear, and it explains things in a way with the additional information, the clarity, the extra bits of information that they might need to help them understand something. But it's also neuroaffirming, and it's not just like a I can't do that because of, or I expect you to do this because of. That is not helpful to them, but saying something along the lines of, I can see that you're overstimulated today. Or if they're a bit younger, I can see that you're struggling today. And I've noticed that loud noises and stimulation, or too much going on in this room, is overwhelming you. So I think that we should just take a little bit of time where we turn everything off. And I give you some space if you want space, but if you want me to be in your space, you can just either ask me, or if you don't feel like you can ask me, you can just come and get me and pull me by the hand into your room. And you basically give them as much information as they can, to as much information as you can, to help them navigate something in a way that includes their needs and includes the level of clarity that they need to help navigate life together and navigate getting the outcomes that best support you as a family and them individually. I think that the other one, again, sounds super simple, is making sure that you always implement routine and structure. It creates stability for them and it creates certainty for them. And sometimes when a child becomes dysregulated, or when you become dysregulated, sometimes zoning into that as a source of comfort is even more necessary than it is just on a day-to-day. And take in mind, if you look at the level of structure you might have day-to-day, that is fine, but when you become more overstimulated, it might even need to be more well considered. Like, let's not change the order of something today. And that might sound really simple. It could be the difference in we brush our teeth and then we go downstairs and we put our shoes on. If you just do that in a separate order today and they're overstimulated, that could cause a meltdown or a shutdown. And it's not necessary. Let's become more routinal. Let's create more stability and certainty and safety in the middle of anything that they're navigating as much as we can. Number 3 would be creating, and it helps you too. And the other one would be, number 3, would be sensory management of yours and theirs as a combination. I did touch on this in the other one, but that could be that, you know what, that they might really like loud music. And they really enjoy that. That really stimulates their brain. It really helps them maybe to express something that they don't feel like they can express. And you are struggling with noise because you are hypersensitive to noise, and actually you're not enjoying that at the moment. And it could just be that both worlds need to be considered. So maybe they really do need that. And at that time, if your capacity is more, that you can consider that maybe, you know what, I'm going to give you half an hour of listening to that at the volume you might need to listen to it, as long as it's not disruptive to, I guess, neighbours or causing some sort of noise pollution issues. But you allow that within reason. And then you say, but the clear limit of that and the boundary of that will be in 30 minutes. So that will be at 5:30. That will be at 5:30, but then we'll have to switch it off. And then you get to have that kind of down, quieter time. Kids, all kids, but kids in particular with autism, thrive off boundaries and safety and understanding something before it gets thrust upon them. So the understanding where the limit of that is, whilst also saying that I can see that you need that and I want to give you that, but again, we have to consider multiple things at the same time, is a really, really great way of navigating that. Number 4 would be looking at resources that help insight, assistance, reminders. This can be things like digital reminders, it could be like emotional cards, it could be numbers. So something that I think that my kids enjoy more because of some interoception problems is like numbers, and actually some of my clients prefer this too. Rather than saying, have a look at this array of emotions, which one are you feeling? It could be, I've noticed that you're feeling quite agitated today. If I said to you between 1 and 10, how you feel in terms of how agitated you feel or how upset you might feel. 1 being that you're not upset at all, 10 being the most you could ever have been and you've ever experienced, where are you? Sometimes those number cards can be really helpful. It's an aid, if you will, a resource in helping you navigate their emotions, prioritizing them, and then also the more steps ahead we can be, I can't stress this enough, the more steps ahead we are in somebody's process, in particular somebody we love, but also our process, and navigating it with 5 steps to buffer rather than falling upon it, it causing chaos, causing the meltdown, and the trying to pick up any pieces that we can pick up from that point and dealing with the aftermath of the feelings that are then embedded inside us and them is the best way of managing this. Number 5 would be encourage and mirror self-care and boundaries. So like you're doing it for them, please encourage them to do it for themselves. If they enjoy drawing or going on long walks with the dog, and it might be enjoyable and you might do it anyway, but encourage it in the framework of, I love that you want to go on a walk today because that's really good for your mind and I can see how happy it makes you, and it almost clears our head out, doesn't it, sometimes, to get out in the open, and helping them frame it where they're not just doing something mindlessly, even though they can understand and they're pulled to the enjoyment of it, but that actually sometimes we can lean more on things that we need as a way of prioritizing our own mental health by being intentional and deliberate and aware of them and helping them create that routine for themselves. So it could be, for example, my son might go, I just need some time on my own, and I respect that, and I will say, do you know what, I think that's amazing. I think that's amazing that you observe that you need that. That I don't want you to be completely on your own, but at the same time I understand that you need that space. So what I will do is it okay if I check on you in half an hour? And he will go yes or no, or can I have a bit longer, or yeah, that's absolutely fine. And we will then, I will go in. It doesn't mean that I immediately thrust upon him that I don't want him to be alone. I might say something like, do you feel like, you know, you might want to talk about it? And then if he goes no, do you need any more time? Yes, no. And normally he will be like, let's spend some time together. Can we watch something together? And that's a thumbs up, and we've navigated that ahead of time rather than after time. Number 6 is helping teach children emotional understanding and regulation. It depends on the age of your child, but emotional regulation and emotional intelligence and emotional understanding is taught. Sometimes people pick it up, but for the most part, we have to be directly taught these things. A little bit like when you first got in a swimming pool, you didn't know how to swim. When you first got on a bike, you didn't know how to ride a bike. When you first experience sadness, you might not know how to navigate it. It's important for us to want to understand and have that, to be able to teach that, but please teach that to our children, because when they understand that there is no bad emotions, emotions are okay. How we handle them, that might not always be okay or safe, but then having a level of understanding about it and having some strategies in place to be able to manage that. Do you know how much safer they feel inside of themselves? That is golden. I think that that's probably my favourite on this list. And number 7 would be seek support. I say this in every video, but I think that we're so encouraged to manage, and it's okay to have people that are really fundamental in terms of your ability to be able to cope. My husband is absolutely one of them. He knows me well enough when I'm starting to reach capacity, especially if things are getting loud, and he will just go, you know what, I can see that you're reaching capacity because the kids are getting a bit giddy and are, you know, they might be squealing. Squealing for me is something that, if I'm completely honest, when kids squeal, I become dysregulated pretty much immediately. I have a way of keeping it obviously inside. I don't take that out on anybody, but I have to consider that that is just something fundamentally in my wiring. So I'm able to go tap out, and he takes care of it because he doesn't mind it at all. If anything, he encourages it and likes it. So having that support system is really important, whether it's having somebody help and guide your routine, your day, having a family that you can lean on, having loved ones that you can lean on, having a support network of people that you can talk to. All of these things are really, really golden. The famous saying is, isn't it, that it takes a village to raise a child, and I really do think it does. I think that the support needs of us as people with hidden disabilities and our children with disabilities, we know that the support needs are even higher, so that requires even more coming together and even more support. And we don't always get that, so we learn that we shouldn't ask for that, but that's not true. We have to ask for that more and become more comfortable in asking for that. And I think that the final thing would be just having that adaptation depending on where things are at in terms of current capacity, because what might be possible yesterday isn't always possible today on both ends for you and your child, and the reviewing of that to make sure that we take care of that the best way that we can, so that we create the best outcomes we can for our children and obviously for ourselves as well. What other ones would you add? What things do you really struggle with and struggle to navigate? Because I'd be happy to help as much as I can, if I can, in the comments. But I would love to hear from you, and I'll speak to you soon.